What happens when Hollywood's biggest stars say no to the rules? In the Golden Age, refusing a studio demand wasn't just risky, it could end your career overnight. From contract rebellions to defying forced romances, these actors didn't just break the mold, they were kicked out for it. Today, we are going to talk about old Hollywood stars who paid the ultimate price for standing their ground in an industry that demanded total control. Olivia de Havilland. Olivia de Havilland broke the chains of the studio system by daring to challenge the oppressive contracts of her time. In the mid-30s, she took on Warner Brothers in a groundbreaking legal battle that forever changed Hollywood. Her courage in demanding freedom from an endless restrictive 7-year agreement led to a landmark ruling that redefined contractual obligations for actors. Her courtroom testimony and subsequent legal victory not only secured her independence, but also set a precedent that echoed throughout the industry. Critics praised her determination, while executives seethed at the loss of control over their prized asset. The legal documents from that historic case reveal a fierce struggle for personal dignity and creative freedom. Reports from the era detail the tension in the courtroom and the shockwaves that reverberated through studio boardrooms. Newspaper headlines of the time spoke of her as a trailblazer and a symbol of resistance. Her triumph came at a personal cost, as studios attempted to sideline her with fewer roles and diminished budgets. Yet the impact of her defiance resonated beyond the silver screen, inspiring countless others to question the stranglehold of the studio system. The ripple effects of that case are still discussed in film schools and legal circles today, marking Olivia de Havilland as one of the first stars to win back her autonomy in an industry built on control. Bette Davis. Bette Davis carved a path of defiance amid the relentless pressures of Hollywood. In 1936, when the major studios sought to confine her to roles that undercut her immense talent, she took a stand against being pigeonholed into inferior characters. Her legal battle against Warner Brothers was not merely about a contract, but a fight for creative respect. Court documents reveal that Davis challenged the studio's right to dictate every facet of her career, from script choices to co-stars. The courtroom drama unfolded with headlines lauding her uncompromising spirit and vilifying the studio's heavy-handed tactics. Although she did not win every legal battle, the fallout from her defiance was palpable. For a time, top-tier roles evaporated as studios re-evaluated her marketability. Industry insiders recalled whispered discussions in smoky back rooms about how an uncompromising star had upset the carefully orchestrated machine of studio control. Biographies published later described Davis as both a victim and a rebel, whose outspokenness ultimately forced a reluctant admiration from her peers. Her legacy in challenging the status quo has endured, serving as a reminder that the pursuit of artistic integrity can come at a significant cost. Her story remains a powerful testament to the courage required to stand against an industry built on strict conformity and control. Tierney. Tierney found herself at the crossroads of personal vulnerability and the harsh demands of Hollywood. Renowned for her captivating beauty and magnetic screen presence, she was expected to remain the flawless icon crafted by the studios. When Tierney faced mental health challenges and publicized personal struggles, the studio system refused to accommodate her need for time away from the relentless spotlight. Reports from the 50s indicate that executives pressured her to continue working despite evident signs of emotional strain. The studios demanded that she conceal her true state, enforcing strict routines and public appearances that did little to honor her well-being. Newspaper articles of the era painted a picture of a star battling inner demons while the system exploited her vulnerabilities. Confidential memos from studio heads suggest that Tierney's refusal to adhere to their scripted image led to her gradual isolation from major projects. Industry critics later described her career as a tragic interplay between talent and an unforgiving corporate machine. While her on-screen legacy remained intact, off-screen, the repercussions of defiance echoed through her later years. Her struggle against a rigid system that valued profit over personal health has been documented in various biographies. The records show that her career, once filled with promise, was curtailed by the very institutions that had once elevated her to stardom. Tierney's journey is remembered not only for her cinematic contributions, but also for her poignant stand against the dehumanizing practices of an era gone by. Marsha Hunt. Marsha Hunt's unwavering commitment to her beliefs cost her dearly in the ruthless world of Hollywood. In an age marked by political hysteria, she refused to recant her outspoken views on civil rights and artistic freedom. When the pressure mounted during the height of anti-communist sentiment, Hunt stood firm, defying the studio-mandated silence that sought to bury dissent. Archival documents from the period detail her refusal to comply with the loyalty oaths demanded by industry authorities. Her courageous stance made headlines, casting her as both a fearless advocate for justice and a pariah among powerful studio executives. Her career, once on a promising trajectory, was abruptly derailed when she was quietly blacklisted. Letters from industry insiders reveal that her talent was overshadowed by the growing paranoia of the era. Her subsequent roles were scarce and often relegated to lesser-known films that did not reflect her full potential. Biographical records note that despite the heavy toll on her professional life, Hunt continued to support social causes and speak out on matters of freedom and fairness. The impact of her decisions is still analyzed by film historians who cite her case as emblematic of the era's political repression. Marsha Hunt remains a symbol of artistic integrity, a star who paid the ultimate price for refusing to compromise her ideals in an industry rife with conformity. Lee Grant. Lee Grant's defiant stance during one of Hollywood's most turbulent periods forever altered the trajectory of her career. When political pressures mounted and the threat of McCarthyism loomed large, she refused to betray her principles by denouncing her colleagues. Her decision to stand by her husband and support blacklisted peers resulted in an immediate and severe backlash from the studio system. Memoirs and public records from the early 50s reveal that executives labeled her as rebellious and uncooperative. Television news reports of the time detailed the controversy surrounding her public appearances at memorial services for those targeted by the anti-communist witch hunts. Her refusal to succumb to the fear-driven mandates of the House Un-American Activities Committee cast her into professional exile. Industry sources noted that her once promising career was reduced to sporadic low-budget film roles. Reviews in major newspapers from the period spoke of her talent while lamenting the loss of a star who had been silenced by an oppressive system. Despite the setbacks, Lee Grant later re-emerged in independent films that praised her resilience and uncompromising spirit. Her story is a powerful reminder of the cost of artistic and personal integrity in a time when conformity was demanded by the highest echelons of power. Her journey continues to inspire discussions about the price of loyalty and the courage required to defy systemic injustice. Dalton Trumbo. Dalton Trumbo became synonymous with defiance in an industry where conformity was the rule. As a gifted screenwriter, his refusal to testify before the government during the anti-communist investigations of the late 40s cost him dearly. His decision to protect his colleagues and maintain his political beliefs led to an official blacklisting that lasted for more than a decade. Historical records from the era recount the tense interrogations and the hostile studio memos that described him as a subversive element. Despite the harsh restrictions imposed on his work, Trumbo continued to write under pseudonyms, his words circulating in secret among the film community. Film critics later marveled at the subversive brilliance that shone through his coded screenplays, even as studios tried to erase his contributions from the annals of cinema. Archive footage from the late 50s captures the lingering impact of the blacklist on his life, with his peers speaking in hushed tones about his undeniable talent and the injustice he faced. Books on Hollywood history detail the painstaking process by which Trumbo slowly regained recognition, culminating in his eventual public credit for epic films like Spartacus and Exodus. His story is a testament to the enduring power of creative expression in the face of systemic repression, a narrative that continues to resonate with advocates of free speech and artistic independence. Edward Dmytryk. Edward Dmytryk's story is one of initial resistance and eventual capitulation under relentless pressure. As one of the Hollywood 10, he initially refused to cooperate with government investigations that sought to expose alleged communist influences in the film industry. His early defiance was met with severe consequences, including jail time and an industry-wide blacklist that nearly ended his career. Official studio memos and government reports from the era indicate that Dmytryk was portrayed as a dangerous radical, a label that made studios hesitant to cast him in any significant roles. The intense scrutiny and isolation eventually led him to reconsider his position. In a controversial decision that split opinion among his peers, he chose to cooperate with the authorities, providing names and details that facilitated his return to work. Contemporary reviews of his later films reflect a mixed legacy, with some critics viewing his decision as a necessary compromise, while others saw it as a betrayal of his earlier ideals. Detailed biographies note that the personal cost of his decision was immense, affecting both his professional reputation and personal relationships. The archival evidence suggests that while his return to Hollywood was marked by small successes, the shadow of his earlier resistance lingered throughout his later career. His case remains one of the most complex narratives of the era, illustrating the crushing weight of external pressures on even the most talented individuals. Gail Russell. Gail Russell emerged as a promising star in the golden era of cinema, before the studio system began to dictate every aspect of her life. Known for her captivating performances in films of the early 40s, she soon found herself at odds with the controlling hands of Paramount Pictures. When the studio attempted to orchestrate her public persona through a forced publicity marriage and relentless social obligations, she resisted. Reports from the time describe how executives grew increasingly frustrated with her refusal to conform to their carefully crafted image. Confidential memos reveal that her independent streak was seen as a liability rather than a strength. The resulting backlash was swift and severe, leading to a gradual erasure of her once promising career. Newspaper articles from the period recount the dramatic decline of a star whose talent was overshadowed by her unwillingness to play along with Hollywood's demands. Biographical accounts emphasize that the studio system viewed her as a threat to the controlled narratives that had been meticulously built over decades. Despite a brief resurgence in smaller films, her name eventually faded from the marquee. Her story, preserved in the archives of film history, serves as a stark reminder of the harsh realities faced by those who dared to resist a system built on rigid conformity and absolute control. Karen Morley. Karen Morley was a bright light in Hollywood during the early years of the talkies, whose career was cut short by an unwavering commitment to her principles. As a rising star at MGM, she became entangled in the political turmoil of her time when she refused to provide testimony against fellow artists during heated investigations. Historical documents indicate that her refusal to cooperate with government pressure led to her name being quietly excised from casting lists. Industry insiders recalled that her outspoken nature made her a target for those in power who were determined to suppress dissent. Biographies published in later years reveal that her early films, marked by a unique blend of vulnerability and strength, were sidelined as the studios moved in a more conservative direction. Archival records from the era note that her progressive stance was both admired and reviled in equal measure. Although her career never fully recovered her legacy as a pioneer who challenged the status quo endures. Detailed accounts of her interviews and public statements provide a rare glimpse into the challenges faced by artists who resisted the pressures to conform. Karen Morley remains a symbol of integrity and defiance in an industry known for its rigid control over talent and public image. Karen Morley. Karen Morley was a bright light in Hollywood during the early years of the talkies, whose career was cut short by an unwavering commitment to her principles. As a rising star at MGM, she became entangled in the political turmoil of her time when she refused to provide testimony against fellow artists during heated investigations. Historical documents indicate that her refusal to cooperate with government pressure led to her name being quietly excised from casting lists. Industry insiders recalled that her outspoken nature made her a target for those in power who were determined to suppress dissent. Biographies published in later years reveal that her early films, marked by a unique blend of vulnerability and strength, were sidelined as the studios moved in a more conservative direction. Archival records from the era note that her progressive stance was both admired and reviled in equal measure. Although her career never fully recovered her legacy as a pioneer who challenged the status quo endures. Detailed accounts of her interviews and public statements provide a rare glimpse into the challenges faced by artists who resisted the pressures to conform. Karen Morley remains a symbol of integrity and defiance in an industry known for its rigid control over talent and public image. Dick Powell. Dick Powell redefined his career by boldly rejecting the musical roles that had once made him a household name. In the early 40s, as he sought to transition from charming musical leads to more serious dramatic roles, the pressure from Warner Brothers grew immense. Studio executives were unwilling to let go of the formula that had proven successful, and Powell found himself caught in a battle for creative control. Trade publications from that era detail the heated negotiations and the mounting frustration on both sides, as Powell insisted on pursuing roles that showcased his dramatic range. Confidential studio memos later revealed that his insistence on breaking free from typecasting was viewed as a direct challenge to the established order. Critics of the time noted that his departure from musical comedies was a risky move that ultimately led to a period of professional uncertainty. His decision to leave the studio system, while controversial, opened the door for him to star in noir films that redefined his image. Film historians now regard his transition as one of the earliest examples of an actor reclaiming artistic freedom from the corporate machine. The echoes of his bold stand continue to resonate in contemporary discussions about the evolution of genre and actor autonomy. Dick Powell's story stands as a vivid illustration of the clash between personal ambition and the strictures of studio power. Betty Hutton. Betty Hutton, once one of Hollywood's brightest comedic talents, found herself at odds with the very system that had catapulted her to fame. During the late 40s and early 50s, her unyielding refusal to submit to rigid studio control created friction with high-level executives. Documents from that period reveal that Hutton's conflicts with directors and producers were not merely matters of personal temperament, but a fundamental rejection of imposed public image and career manipulation. Sources from the era indicate that when she walked away from a popular television series, it was not out of whim, but as a deliberate stand against the predetermined scripts and forced publicity events. Critics in the trade journals noted that her departure was emblematic of a larger struggle for creative autonomy within Hollywood. Despite being one of the highest-paid actresses of her time, the backlash from the studios relegated her to roles that failed to capture her full talent. Detailed film reviews of the subsequent years point to a marked decline in her box office draw. Her trajectory is meticulously documented in biographies that explore the tension between artistic freedom and commercial demands. The legacy of Betty Hutton remains intertwined with the cost of defiance in an era that prized conformity over individuality, leaving behind a narrative rich in both achievement and sorrow. Betty Hutton. Betty Hutton, once one of Hollywood's brightest comedic talents, found herself at odds with the very system that had catapulted her to fame. During the late 40s and early 50s, her unyielding refusal to submit to rigid studio control created friction with high-level executives. Documents from that period reveal that Hutton's conflicts with directors and producers were not merely matters of personal temperament, but a fundamental rejection of imposed public image and career manipulation. Sources from the era indicate that when she walked away from a popular television series, it was not out of whim, but as a deliberate stand against the predetermined scripts and forced publicity events. Critics in the trade journals noted that her departure was emblematic of a larger struggle for creative autonomy within Hollywood. Despite being one of the highest-paid actresses of her time, the backlash from the studios relegated her to roles that failed to capture her full talent. Detailed film reviews of the subsequent years point to a marked decline in her box office draw. Her trajectory is meticulously documented in biographies that explore the tension between artistic freedom and commercial demands. The legacy of Betty Hutton remains intertwined with the cost of defiance in an era that prized conformity over individuality, leaving behind a narrative rich in both achievement and sorrow. James Dunn. James Dunn's journey in Hollywood took an unexpected turn when he began demanding roles that reflected the depth of his abilities. A celebrated actor who earned accolades for his performance in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, he soon found that the studio system was unwilling to let him break free from the light romantic roles that had brought him early fame. Industry records from Fox document a growing rift between Dunn and the decision-makers who controlled casting and scripts. His insistence on exploring more complex characters clashed with the profitable formula of feel-good pictures. Critical reviews from the mid-40s reveal that his performances in dramatic films were met with both praise and controversy. Archival interviews describe the mounting tension in studio boardrooms as executives debated whether to risk the success of their established formulas. As the pressure mounted, Dunn found himself gradually sidelined from major projects. His career, once vibrant and full of promise, began to fade as the studios moved on without him. Biographical accounts from that time paint a picture of an actor caught between artistic ambition and the unforgiving demands of an industry driven by commercial interests. His story remains a cautionary tale of talent stifled by rigid contractual systems and the relentless pursuit of predictable box office success. Ona Munson. Ona Munson was celebrated for her unique allure and undeniable talent, yet she became entangled in Hollywood's fierce demands for conformity. Best known for a memorable role that captured the imagination of audiences, her off-screen life soon became a battleground over issues of personal freedom and authenticity. As rumors about her private life circulated, studio executives grew increasingly wary of her refusal to hide the truth about her relationships. Confidential studio communications from the late 30s indicate that her unwillingness to conform to a sanitized image led to her gradual marginalization in major film projects. Newspaper articles from the era recount how her roles began to shrink as the studios tightened their grip on star images. Critics observed that despite her enduring talent, the industry's desire for a controlled public persona overshadowed her natural charisma. Biographical sources detail the struggles she endured, including harsh scrutiny from gossip columnists and tabloid reporters who relished every misstep. In a time when every personal detail was manipulated for profit, Ona Munson's story stands as a poignant example of the cost of authenticity. Her eventual disappearance from leading roles marked the end of an era defined by a refusal to be molded by external expectations. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer's defiant spirit and uncompromising nature collided with Hollywood's strict standards in a dramatic fashion. A star whose early career shone brightly, she soon found herself battling a system that demanded complete obedience. When faced with constant pressure to alter her appearance and behavior for public consumption, she boldly resisted the carefully scripted image imposed upon her. Historical newspaper clippings document heated exchanges between her representatives and studio executives, underscoring the intense scrutiny that accompanied her every move. Biographies detail a turbulent period, marked by public outbursts and personal struggles that were sensationalized by the press. The studio system, unwilling to tolerate such unpredictability, gradually sidelined her from high-profile projects. The resulting isolation and forced institutionalization have since become a subject of intense scrutiny among film historians. Interviews with industry veterans recount the shock and dismay that accompanied her fall from grace. Her legacy is now seen as a powerful cautionary tale about the cost of artistic freedom in an environment that values image over substance. The records of her tumultuous journey continue to spark debate about the harsh realities faced by stars who dared to defy convention. Robert Ryan. Robert Ryan built a reputation as a fiercely principled actor who challenged Hollywood's penchant for propagandistic roles. Known for his intense portrayals in wartime dramas, he soon found himself at odds with studio executives who insisted he participate in patriotic campaigns during World War II. Industry documents from the early 50s reveal that his refusal to endorse exaggerated war bond tours and overly heroic portrayals was seen as an act of rebellion. Critical reviews of his performances note that his brooding intensity carried a subtle critique of the system that demanded unwavering conformity. Archival footage from that period captures the tension as he clashed with directors determined to mold his image into that of an unyielding American hero. Detailed reports in trade magazines expose the behind-the-scenes conflicts as his insistence on authentic character work disrupted carefully crafted publicity strategies. Despite earning accolades for his dramatic roles, Ryan faced significant career setbacks when studios labeled him as politically unreliable. His personal correspondence from the era reflects a man who valued artistic truth above all else. Film historians now view his journey as emblematic of the broader struggle for creative freedom in a profit-driven industry. His story, woven into the fabric of Hollywood history, remains a testament to the enduring conflict between individual expression and the demands of a rigid system. Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson remains one of the most influential figures whose career was derailed by unwavering principles. An actor and singer whose talent transcended boundaries, he openly challenged the prevailing attitudes on race and injustice during his time. Historical records recount how Robeson refused offers that demanded he soften his outspoken views in exchange for continued work in mainstream cinema. Studio executives and government officials alike took notice of his radical stances. Biographical accounts from the 50s detail how his passport was revoked and his international tours were abruptly canceled due to mounting political pressure. Newspaper archives from the era reveal that his public appearances were increasingly curtailed, leaving him isolated from the major cinematic projects he once commanded. Despite his profound impact on the arts and civil rights, his career in Hollywood was effectively ended by the relentless blacklisting that marked the era. His recorded speeches and interviews from that turbulent time serve as enduring evidence of a man who chose his convictions over career longevity. Paul Robeson remains a powerful symbol of resistance, whose story continues to inspire debates about freedom of expression in a tightly controlled industry. Jean Muir. Jean Muir emerged as a victim of the fear and suspicion that defined the Red Scare. A talented actress whose early television appearances earned her acclaim, she soon found herself targeted for her outspoken criticisms of loyalty oaths. Studio records reveal that her refusal to sign the mandated pledges against subversive influences led directly to her dismissal from a popular television series. Trade journals of the early 50s documented the rapid decline of her career as producers sought safer, more compliant talent. Newspaper interviews from that time recount her quiet protest against the pressures to conform to politically acceptable norms. Industry insiders later noted that her unyielding stance, although admirable, left her with few opportunities in a market that prized conformity above all. Her professional isolation was compounded by personal hardships that were amplified by the relentless media scrutiny of the era. Although Jean Muir continued to work in smaller productions, her early promise was irreparably damaged by the unforgiving political climate. Her story, preserved in numerous biographies and film histories, highlights the severe consequences of defiance in a time when the cost of artistic freedom was measured in career and reputation. Donald Woods. Donald Woods challenged Hollywood's rigid expectations by refusing to alter his identity to fit preconceived stereotypes. As an actor of exceptional talent, his insistence on maintaining his true name and heritage clashed with the industry's desire for market-friendly alterations. Historical documents from Warner Brothers and Columbia recount how his demands for authenticity were met with resistance. Reports indicate that he was repeatedly offered roles that diluted his identity in favor of generic heroism. His determination to keep his original persona led to a gradual phase-out from major productions, with casting directors favoring more malleable stars. Reviews from the mid-40s highlight his powerful performances that contrasted sharply with the sanitized images propagated by the studios. Biographies describe his journey as one marked by repeated conflicts with powerful executives who valued image over individuality. Newspaper features from the era illustrate a man caught in a battle between personal conviction and an industry that prized conformity. His struggle serves as a stark reminder of the challenges faced by those who dare to defy traditional norms. Donald Woods remains a compelling figure whose quest for authenticity cost him dearly in an industry driven by commercial expediency. Leif Erickson. Leif Erickson, once a rising star at Paramount, encountered a dramatic career downturn after refusing to indulge in the fabricated romances favored by studio publicity teams. A decorated Navy veteran, he returned to Hollywood with the expectation of portraying a heroic image befitting his service. However, studio executives insisted on pairing him in contrived romantic subplots that clashed with his true persona. Historical reports reveal that his refusal to participate in these orchestrated narratives led to a gradual erosion of his on-screen appeal. Trade magazines from the late 40s detailed the internal debates within the studio over his future roles. Critics noted that his natural gravitas and authentic military background were undermined by forced melodrama. Despite his undeniable talent and a growing base of admirers, the loss of creative control stifled the momentum of his career. Interviews with industry insiders later recounted his frustration and the eventual decision to step away from the glitz of Hollywood. His story is documented in several film histories as a poignant example of a star sidelined by rigid corporate expectations. Leif Erickson's struggle underscores the challenges that come with maintaining personal integrity in an industry that demands conformity to its ever-changing image. Florence Rice. Florence Rice, a promising actress at MGM, faced the brutal consequences of defying typecasting in an era that prized conventional beauty and predictable roles. Daughter of the legendary sports writer Grantland Rice, she was expected to embody the idealized image that the studio had crafted for its stars. Determined to assert her individuality, she repeatedly rejected roles that pigeonholed her into the cliched archetype of the dumb blonde or the secondary romantic interest. Confidential studio communications from the early 40s reveal that her demands for more substantive and challenging parts were met with resistance from executives. Detailed reviews of her performances in lesser-known films indicate that her talent was often overshadowed by the studio's inability to reconcile her ambitions with their market strategies. Newspaper columns from that time recount how her career, once brimming with potential, gradually evaporated as MGM chose to focus on more malleable faces. Biographical sources note that Florence Rice's determination to remain true to herself ultimately resulted in her being dropped from major projects. Her fading from the limelight remains one of Hollywood's quieter tragedies, a story of promise lost to the relentless pressure to conform. Her legacy serves as a somber reminder of the sacrifices made by those who dared to challenge an industry built on rigid control and predictable images. Greta Garbo. Reclusion became her signature after walking away from MGM in mid-1941. By then, she had already reshaped Hollywood mythology with films such as Anna Christie in 1930 and Camille in 1936. MGM's contract required stars to attend lavish publicity tours, yet in October of 1938, she refused a 9-city European promotional circuit, citing exhaustion and a desire for privacy. Studio correspondence from that year reveals executives branding her as uncooperative and fretting over lost marketing opportunities. After completing her final film, Two-Faced Woman, in May 1941, she declined MGM's offer of a 5-year renewal, allowing her contract to lapse on June 30th. Newspaper reports described a tense meeting in Louis B. Mayer's office, where Garbo insisted she would never return to the screen. Her famous line, "I want to be alone," had become reality, and she retreated to New York, living quietly until her death in 1990. Biographers note that her withdrawal dealt a severe blow to MGM's prestige roster, illustrating the cost studios paid when a top star refused their carefully scripted image and demands. Luise Rainer. 2 Academy Awards in 2 years could not shield her from studio wrath. After winning Best Actress for The Great Ziegfeld in 1936 and The Good Earth in 1937, Rainer clashed with MGM over her next assignments. In late 1938, she rejected the lead in Marie Antoinette, deeming the script historically inaccurate. Memos from producer Irving Thalberg describe heated exchanges in December 1938, where Rainer argued for more nuanced roles. By February 1939, MGM placed her on suspension, citing unwillingness to fulfill contractual obligations. When she refused an overseas shoot for a planned sequel to The Good Earth, her contract was terminated that June. Trade publications noted that the studio swiftly replaced her with younger talent, effectively erasing her from major productions. Despite attempts to revive her career in Europe, Rainer never regained her Hollywood footing. Her experience underscores how even the highest-paid stars risked exile by defying studio edicts on casting and creative control. Clara Bow. The It Girl's glittering smile faded amid a storm of studio demands. Paramount's top box office draw in 1927 and 1928, Bow resisted a push toward more controlled performances and public appearances. In early 1931, she walked off the set of The Secret Call after refusing director instructions to redo a scene until her nervous exhaustion forced her into hospital care. Internal Paramount reports label her emotionally unstable and cite her refusal to attend mandatory publicity classes. By late 1932, following a series of personal breakdowns and a very public divorce, the studio opted not to renew her contract when it expired on December 31st. Press accounts at the time spoke of a star broken by her own fame, yet Bow's decision to reject forced promotional tours and scripted interviews set a precedent. Hollywood would not tolerate unpredictable behavior, no matter how bankable the talent. She retired quietly in 1933, leaving behind an indelible legacy of both cinematic innovation and the perils of defying studio control. Norma Talmadge. A silent era queen, she refused to embrace talking pictures and paid with career oblivion. Talmadge ruled the box office from 1917 through 1927 under a contract with First National Pictures. When the studio offered her a lucrative 5-picture deal in early 1929 contingent on speaking roles, she declined, insisting that sound films compromised her artistic integrity. Internal studio letters from March 1929 expressed frustration at her unwillingness to adapt to new technology. By August, her contract was allowed to lapse, and she withdrew from public life, later admitting in a 1932 interview that the transition terrified her. The industry moved swiftly to embrace sound, and Talmadge's departure marked one of the most dramatic exits of the era. Though she briefly returned for a stage tour in 1931, her name vanished from film credits thereafter. Her story illustrates the rigid expectations studios placed on stars to evolve on their terms, and the swift consequences for those who refused. Claudette Colbert. A savvy actress, she stood her ground against Paramount's script demands. After winning an Oscar for It Happened One Night in 1934, Colbert was offered a leading role in Cleopatra the following year. When script rewrites reduced the Queen to a secondary character, she rejected the part in November 1935. Studio records show Paramount attempted to discipline her by suspending her pay for 2 months. In August 1937, she filed a breach of contract suit seeking $1 million, arguing the studio had forced her into projects beneath her stature. Trade papers described her legal action as audacious, but noted it prompted other stars to question their own contracts. By April 1938, she negotiated a release from her long-term contract and began freelancing, securing top roles at Columbia and MGM thereafter. Her maneuver not only preserved her career, but signaled to Hollywood that even a leading lady could defy studio scripts and emerge stronger.